Hello, everyone, and welcome back to People Jew Wanna Know podcast. Here to bring you some comedic relief, and Lord knows we need it, is today's guest, Liz Glazer. Liz Glazer is an award-winning stand-up comedian, actor, and writer. She won first place in the Boston Comedy Festival and Ladies of Laughter competition, has been featured in a full article on the Wall Street Journal, and has opened for Mike Kaplan and Maria Bamford. Liz was also part of the Seattle International Comedy Competition and will be a part of the upcoming HBO Women in Comedy Festival. As an actor, Liz has appeared on ABC, CBS, and is on the faculty at Leslie Kahn & Co., the Los Angeles acting studio. Liz is also writing a television pilot about her life, a draft of which was a semifinalist in the Stage 32 writing competition. Liz began her career, as most stand-up comedians do, as a tenured law professor. After years of working at various law firms, Liz went on to teach law and get tenure from Hofstra University, and also visited at other law schools such as Northwestern and Loyola. While she was a law professor, Liz published law review articles in numerous journals, including ones from Northwestern, Georgetown, Harvard, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, among other journals. And then Liz gave it all up to do comedy, where her material draws from her own life as a lesbian, a rabbi's wife, and a former lawyer. These days, Liz performs regularly at comedy clubs and festivals. She also does private events for law schools, law firms, synagogues, and major corporations. While Liz loves performing live in person, she's equally comfortable yelling into her laptop on Zoom as she did nightly during the pandemic. To me, Liz is a certified gangster, and with her, there is so much more than meets the eye. She is very multifaceted as a person, and the more you think you know Liz, the less you actually do. What can I say about our episode that you're about to hear here? If ADHD was an episode, it would be this one. I mean, Liz and I talk about a bunch of things and nothing really all at once. Liz has countless funny stories to share with us and reflects on her life, her Jewish upbringing, her marriage, and her career. Something Liz kind of inspired me with is her sincere love of chatting. And I'll explain what I mean by this. Because I have this podcast, I'm always trying to optimize my conversations with people. I try to get the most value, the most learning, the most oomph out of all my guests, and I try to optimize all my conversations and get to like a bottom line quickly. I also think our short attention spans and the short form content that we consume plays into that habit as well. In this episode, Liz reminded me of the simple joy of just chatting. Doesn't have to have any optimization, a larger purpose. You can just chat and enjoy it. And I absolutely love that. One of the things we chat about in this episode is randomly horse kielbasa. Why? Because Liz has this viral video where she does crowd work about horse meat. And I happen to be from a city in Ukraine that's known for horse kielbasa called Mahan. Also, you guys know that I've been to Kazakhstan and horse meat is a national food there. So I've had horse meat a million times at this point. It tastes like brisket. I don't know what to tell you. It's good. Anyway, I ended up having to cut a portion of this episode out where I told a story about someone who got detained at customs for trying to bring horse kielbasa back into the US from abroad. I had to cut it because I accidentally mentioned who it was that did that. And this person would single-handedly end my life if they found out that this story about them was on my podcast. With that said, folks, an important lesson from People Jew Wanna Know. If you acquire horse kielbasa while abroad and you attempt to bring it through your checked bag when you're flying back to the US, the dogs will smell it and you will be detained at customs, and it will be a story your friends laugh about for the rest of your life. We call it Kielbasa Gate. Anyway, please enjoy this episode. Hey, Liz, welcome to People Jew Wanna Know podcast. How are you?
Good. Hi, Margarita. How are you?
I'm excellent.
Good.
I think it's warming up. It's like the first real day of spring in New York. So.
Yeah. So I should have said Baruch Hashem because I do sometimes I'll say thank God when like a person who has no idea of that regular parlance among Jewish circles, they'll be like, how are you? Thank God. And they're like, what's wrong? But like, I feel like it's such a normal thing to say, Baruch Hashem or thank God or whatever, but I am good, whatever. I sometimes I do BH for sure. Knock on wood, what are your feelings about knock on wood? Like, obviously it's not Jewish, but also it's very Jewish to hedge one's bets enough that you're knocking on wood, right? Like, I'm not saying it as an homage to Jesus or anything like that. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's a Jesus thing, actually. My mother told me recently that it's about knocking on a coffin to make sure that the person inside is in fact dead.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but there's also never any wood anywhere. And so then I'm carrying around, like a very superstitious person, AKA a Jew, these knocks to find some wood to knock on. You know what I mean?
They've been pent up.
Yeah. Well, everything is for me.
In Russian culture, we do like a tfu, like spit.
Oh,
like,
spit. Yeah. Because my dad is from Latvia. Okay. Did you know that? But yeah, Russian, 222. Yeah, I know of that one too. So my mom is of Polish descent. My dad is from Latvia. And so he's not Russian. Like, if you would say Russian, he'd be like, I'm from Riga. Right. But like, there's a lot of that and change over time in terms of like USSR to now and whatever. The thing is, my dad had the personality of like anything I was going to say, it wasn't going to be exactly right. So if he's correcting me, I mean, now he's dead, so he can't correct me now. You know what I mean? That was why he died. Not really, but whatever. Do you have a comment?
I have a thought.
What is it?
I was going to say, and that's, folks, how you know Liz is a comedian.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, my dad was very funny too. I don't think he would object to any of what I've said, unless like the reason for the objection is just because it's his personality. He objected to everything. So it's like,
very Jewish,
maybe very Russian. I don't know, whatever. So anyway, 222, I'm familiar.
So tell us about yourself.
I'm a comedian. That's what I do. I'm an actor. I'm a writer. I do everything that's like, creative that involves talking. I have a podcast as well. It's called Together We're Straight. Listen to that if you want to. Don't if you don't. I don't really care. I mean, I want people to, but here's my thing. I don't like pressure. So I used to be a lawyer, and I am still technically, but like I haven't practiced since 2015. And even for most of my law career, I was a teacher. I was a law professor. And I feel like so much of my past life professionally was like, oh my God, the stakes are so high and it's pressure. And the reality is that in performance, there's a lot of that too. But I really try to reject it. Like, it doesn't serve me. It certainly doesn't serve me if like before something big, I'm like, this really matters. It's like way to mess it up that way. But anyway, so you don't have to listen to my podcast. But if you want to, then that's fine. Whoever's watching, whatever, it's very good. I do think it's very good. I started it because my crazy family invited themselves to my friend Hilberto's wedding. Not to the wedding, although some of them did effectively invite themselves. They were invited to the wedding, but they invited themselves to the trip of the wedding, because he got married in Puerto Vallarta. And basically first my in-laws were like, we're coming, and then my mom, and then my brother, whatever. It was just like nobody who I know wasn't at this wedding, because they're all insane, as am I. And it was, was it fun? I don't know. My mom fell and my wife got strep. So, and we're there with a 1-year-old. So it was a lot, but it was fun as well. So basically I wanted to tell Hilberto about that, and I wanted it on video. And so I was like, let's start a podcast. And then I said that, and we have the clip of that. So if you look at my page, you can see that clip. And I do think it's very funny. But also then we were having fun, and we just decided to like keep going with the podcast. How long have you had this podcast?
It's a little over a year.
Oh, mazel tov.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's super exciting.
Knock on wood.
Totally. Yeah. Good luck. Right?
Okay. So I want to talk about your recovering lawyership.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Talk to me about what you've learned as a lawyer, because they do teach you how to think about things in law school a certain way, and how to organize your thoughts. And I guess so. Know if it influenced how you write your jokes.
I was a pretty terrible law student, is the truth. And so I am not sure that any of like specifically what I got came from law school. That said, if I really want to dig deep, like what really did I engage with in law school? So one thing I did in law school was I wrote a comment, which is like different schools call it different things, but it's basically a paper that was published in a journal at school. And that taught me the process of the exactness with which you are supposed to write and say stuff as a lawyer. But the thing about that kind of, I guess, education, but also just like the searing into your brain that like anything that you say must have a source, is a kind of intellectual honesty that has a rigor attached to it because it's like somebody's going to call you on it if you don't have a source for something. So after a while, I guess it's sort of like therapy, where if you go enough times, then you start to like see the connections for yourself, hopefully, or whatever. And I think it did a similar thing for me where I was like, how do I know that? Right. And so I try to speak with that type of precision, to the annoyance, I'm very sure, of my wife, who's like, you don't always have to do, whatever. It's like kind of maddening to be around somebody like that sometimes. But I think overall, there is, I guess, to say the same thing again, like a kind of intellectual honesty, like a real, like, how do you actually know that, And it sort of takes you away from statements that are like always and never, because most things aren't.
Yeah.
In fact.
Well, it's like somewhat.
Well, right. And that is hedging to a degree, but it's also hedging in the most like charitable, genuine, generous interpretation of it, for the purpose of being the most truthful. Even though like lawyers have, of course, this reputation for being liars. And I'm not saying that's not true, right? Like I've definitely seen some of that in terms of like people negotiating. And I'm like, that didn't seem right. Or, I've had those moments, as I imagine others may have, who've been in negotiations of one kind or another. Thankfully, they were few and far between and I can remember them specifically, but like it's happened. So I do understand where that reputation may arise from. That said, I've met far more lawyers who are just like really trying to like do their best to get the closest as possible to the truth and to represent people in the best light.
My comedy teacher always used to tell me, stand-up comedy, Margarita, not truth comedy.
Oh, fair. Yeah. I mean, and I get that for sure. But then there's also Truth in Comedy, great book by Sharda Halpern, and Del Close, I think, is a co-author too, but like certainly, of the school. And people have lots of different opinions about this, as they should. But it's like comedy can be all sorts of things, right? There's a great book by Jesse David Fox, comedy book. I don't know if you know it, but he's a journalist, very, esteemed journalist about comedy for Vulture, I believe. And he wrote a book, and it's like a treatise basically on comedy, which is how it's intended. Not that I like read it. I did Audible, but because I'm illiterate, but nor do I even pay for Audible. I'm the worst. I have my mom's Audible subscription. And then I just like, she's like, what self-help book did you buy? But I'm like, what other Outlander book do you not need? But anyway, she pays for it so she can do whatever she wants. And also she's my mother. She can do whatever she wants. She can fall in Mexico if she wants. She didn't want that, but it happened. But anyway, so truthful comedy. That's what I love. And of course, like, that note of it's not truth comedy, it's stand-up comedy. I'm butchering it, I think. But like that is meaning that you don't need every single detail all the time. And if there's something that's untrue about it, it needn't stop you from saying the joke in every instance. I was talking about this earlier today, that I have this story. I don't know what to do with it yet, which is like fun, because then it's like, maybe, part of what I find fun about comedy, and frustrating, but also fun, is like when you have these things that you're like, I know this is funny, or I know this happened and I know it's unbelievable in some way, but I don't really know where to put it yet. Do you relate to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you could work for hours on it.
Yeah. Or years. Yeah. But like, I mean, sometimes like I'm of the mind that like, I write regularly and I sort of like run material by trusted friends regularly enough that I kind of let go of like, if something's not working that hard, then I'm like, okay, maybe now's not the season for it. And that's totally fine. But like, I have a couple of stories where, so I have not always been sober, but I am sober now. Okay. I was a very heavy drinker as a baby, but which is sorry for a joke. But anyway, I have these stories about having used drugs in the past. My point of view on drug use, I think, is a little bit different from other people who I've heard who talk about their sobriety, because like, I'm not a sober person who's like, ugh, I hate drugs or whatever. Like, I think that drugs can be super helpful, and they were super helpful to me specifically. And of course, like I have to, the footnote, and this is the lawyer, like fentanyl is not helpful. So like, that's the scary thing, is like, this is way back in 2015 where this was like not as much of an issue. But now, it's like if something's there on the market that's like going to take you out in one dose, like don't do those drugs. But this was before that time. And I have this story where I took a gram of Molly and I was intending to pull an all-nighter to watch the videos of a screenwriting class that I had signed up for and never gone to in person, probably because I was on other drugs. But anyway, so I take the Molly, I turn on the first class. I see the teacher, this guy, Jacob, at the front of the room in the video. I had never met him before because I had never been to class. And then 10 minutes later, my thoughts are way more interesting because I'm on a literal gram of Molly and I'm like, I have to go into the city. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. I go on the subway and I'm like having like a beautiful mind type of experience. I have to write everything down. I didn't bring any paper. So I'm like finding like toilet paper on the floor of the subway and like writing it out, whatever. I was insane. But anyway, at some point, this like adventure into the city wraps up and I'm like, I have to go home. I'm on the platform for the subway at 42nd Street to go back to Sunset Park, which was where I lived. And I see a guy walking on the platform of the subway, and it looks like the teacher from the class. And I knew his name, and I said out loud, I was like, Jacob? And he turned around, and it was him, which is insane. And so then he's like, hello. And I'm like, I was the one who never came to class and blah, blah, blah. And I'm on a gram of Molly. And he's like, I think you have to go home. And so anyway, so he takes me into the subway, and he is like, okay. And he was very calm and very kind to me and whatever. And his name is Jacob Kruger. Take his screenwriting class if he still offers it. And he said to me something that I will never forget for sure, which is, the thing about writing as opposed to taking drugs for the night is that if you engage in the practice of writing instead, the crazy resolves on the page. And I was like, oh my God, I have to write that down. And I found another piece of toilet paper and whatever. But anyway, so I still don't know what to do with that story because like, is the point of the story like do drugs? You never know. Or, this cool thing could happen. But anyway, so I'm saying all of this because that's a story that I'm like, sort of still in the workshopping phases of whatever, it's all true. But I don't really know like what the point is, what a final punchline is. Like some of the stuff is missing and that's okay. But somebody gave me a note. It was like a trusted person, but they were like, well, what if it wasn't him? What if it was a different guy? And I was like, that's literally not the story. Like I mean, if it wasn't him, literally, I wouldn't have cared. If it wasn't him, then I'm just like a lunatic going around saying the name and it's not him. And maybe I was a lunatic anyway. I don't doubt that.
It's unbelievable.
Well, it's just like literally, I'm like, what? And so anyway, so sometimes I think when people give a note to like change the truth, I get it because sometimes the truth is like, people have said it like, you don't need to know the color of the shoe leather is like a phrase that people talk about with like having so many details because you're so committed to truth that we really stop caring. And it's kind of like listening to, security footage of your life or whatever, which obviously I would be very interested in. I love security footage. I would watch a security camera all day and all night. I would be a security guard if I could actually protect anything. So, but I cannot, make no mistake. Nobody would make that mistake, but I can't. But anyway, so in terms of like your response to your teacher in your head or otherwise is like, yeah, there are times to change the truth for the purpose of the story, for the purpose of the piece, whatever you might be creating. But there are also times when you're like, no, the truth is this. And that's the whole point. Like, if the shoe leather color is important to the story, then you leave it in. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
I hope you're able to work it into something.
Isn't it good?
Yeah,
it's just like, I mean, I think it would be a fun way of announcing that like, maybe drugs are great because here's this magical thing that happened on drugs. So I'm not here to have a DARE program where I'm telling you not to do drugs. Do drugs so that you can see the possibility of something amazing like that happening and then realize that the power is within you, which it is.
Bring him into the crowd.
Ha! Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know him. Like really effectively, I don't know him, but he's like a guy.
But he knows you.
Yeah, maybe.
And he's seen
He's like, stop telling that story. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
And also, I was thinking about, as you were speaking, you mentioned negotiation and
Yeah.
lying in negotiation. So this is what I studied in grad school.
Oh.
And I used to do sales
Okay.
for a small startup. And I
Okay.
had a wonderful manager who I'm still very close with.
Huh.
He's a great fan of the podcast,
Oh,
which is
good.
very nice because
That's
he's
great.
not even Jewish.
Okay.
And he sometimes when you're doing negotiations, you
Yeah.
want to delay the amount of, you want to create delays and not share the pricing of something
Sure.
quickly or right away.
Sure.
Because you don't want to lead with a number first.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not favorable for you to
Sure.
be the one to throw out a number first. So when somebody asks you for the price, you want to deflect.
Okay.
And the question is, how do you deflect? And so when I was in grad school, I took a negotiation class and the teacher gave us a scenario.
Okay.
And does anyone have any ideas for how you could handle this? And I raised my hand and I said, okay, well, if you want to deflect, when they come and ask you what's your price, you say, oh, I don't know. I got to go talk to my pricing team about it.
Sure.
But there's no pricing team. And
Okay.
It's just you at
Yeah.
time.
Right.
And everybody laughed. And this advice I got from my old boss, who always used to tell me, if they ask you for a price, tell them you need to go consult the pricing team.
Okay.
If they ask you for a discount, tell them you need to go consult the
yeah.
pricing team.
Yeah.
There's no pricing team.
Right.
And the professor looked at me and she was like, Margarita, but that's not true.
Okay.
And I was like, you asked me about a negotiation tactic.
Yeah.
Not to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And everybody
Interesting.
laughed. And to me, I think sometimes lying
Yeah.
is fine in these scenarios because it doesn't hurt anybody per se.
Yeah. Well, I think in that instance, like, I hesitate to say that it's lying just because, like, I mean, in terms of, like, especially in business, you know, I have a Jewish education. I'm very proud of my Judaism and I'm proud of my Jewish education. I went to first grade through 12th grade, Jewish day school, modern Orthodox. My parents were less Orthodox at home because they wanted us to know exactly what we were doing wrong at all times, I guess, which was the education that they gave us. But that's a joke. But like, also it was kind of what happened. But anyway, I really appreciated my Jewish education. My best friends today are still my best friends from then. You know what I mean? So like, it really has been like very hardcore in my life. And I remember a lot about like certain rules. And one of the rules that I remember hearing is that like when you die, hopefully 120 and, you know, whatever should be a long life for you and me, you know, but you. But anyway, is that you're asked, like the first question is, were you honest in matters of business? And so I don't know if that's
true.
I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows because you can't report back. But that was like the legend that like, you know, and so I was always like, okay, well, if that's the first question, like I'm not getting out then.
Fucked. Yeah.
No, but like I really have taken it as a very serious like prompt, you know, in terms of like being honest in business. But I don't know that I think that like saying you have to consult your team is a level of like dishonesty. So what was the right answer in that class? Like, look over here?
She just more so said that, to put it
Yeah.
more clearly. What she asked was, how would you handle it?
Okay.
And I suggested that you deflect.
Oh, got
and
it.
I
Got it.
suggested that you consult the pricing team.
Oh, sure.
She said you should not deflect,
Okay.
and you should do something else.
Oh,
I
got
had
it.
suggested deflection
Ah.
as one tactic, but you
Sure.
could go an alternate route.
Oh, got it.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean deflection is bad.
Yeah.
The other thing that was,
Yeah.
this is like very much me as a person
Yeah,
too.
totally.
When I got my first job out of school,
Yeah.
I was moving to New York, out
Okay.
of Minnesota.
Okay.
And the taxes in New York are much higher than they are in Minnesota.
Sure.
And so our HR sat us all on a call, these new employees, and was like, you have to pay your taxes in New York.
Yeah.
Like you will be taxed in New York.
Yeah.
And I raised my hand and I was like, well, what if I set my address up as a Minnesota address? Can I get taxed in Minnesota? And she goes, no, that's illegal.
Right.
It's not illegal, folks.
Okay.
If you live 51% of the time
Sure.
in a certain place and 49% in the other, you get taxed in the place where you're 51%. So
Okay.
I could have lived half the year in Minnesota and half the year in New York
Yeah.
and got away with it. But this is like the funny thing about me. Like people like to say, oh, that's lying, or oh, that's illegal. Well, no, it depends, right?
Well, yeah, for sure.
You gotta think of the gray area. I'm always somebody trying to exploit the boundary a little bit, I would say.
Okay, got it. Yeah. But I mean, so in that instance, like you could the answer is what you said, that you could do the 51%.
Of course. But I just found it funny that she was like, no, that's illegal.
Sure.
It's such a hard
Rather
line, but
than,
that's not true.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like an all or nothing kind of thinking, as opposed to like, well, the way that you could do it is to live 51% of the time in Minnesota, 49 in New York, or, you know, more than 51 or fewer than 49, like rather than just being like, no, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about your relationship with your family, but I want to know a little bit about the family you've built.
Sure.
Your wife is a rabbi. Is that right?
Yes.
Talk to me about how you met and what it's like for a Jewish comic to be married to a rabbi.
Sure. I mean, you know, we met through a mutual friend. It was, you know, somebody who I had gone to high school with, not like my grade or a good friend or anything from high school. She knew and knows my wife a little bit more than she knew and knows me, but we were connected on Facebook, I think, and that through Facebook Messenger.
And that was a setup, like right away, this was a dating contest.
Oh, yeah,
you guys would hit it off.
100%. Yes. And basically my wife and this friend were like, you know, talking about like possible, like, what are you thinking of doing next in your life? And then my wife was like, oh, I think I'd really like to meet someone. And then this friend was like, I think I know someone. And then it turned out that I, at that time, was like, you know, not just out of something, but like I had sort of been in a, I guess like a situationship or something like that was like bad for my future. You know, it was just sort of like, okay, whatever. But was sort of like coming to a point of wanting something more serious in a way that I don't think I had quite before. And then basically like at that time, I mean, the details of it are that I was like going away for a month, but then, you know, when I got back, we went on a date and it was really fun, but I was moving to Los Angeles. I knew that at that time. So basically on our first date, which was going so well, I said to my now wife, but I was like, hey, I'm moving to LA. So like, I'm moving in 6 weeks. And basically we decided that like we would hang out for 6 weeks and like see where it went. And then of course, like we stayed together the whole time. And then I would move back 3 years later and we were long distance during that time. But I think that that was also like helpful because the time away, I mean, because it allowed us to grow our connection more slowly. And I think had we been in the same place the whole time, we probably wouldn't have done that. We would have like moved in right away or something like that. We say this, you know, frequently as like, we feel it happened exactly as it should have happened. And she is a rabbi. She was a rabbi then, she's a rabbi now. And I love that. Like I've always had a real spiritual and religious, I don't mean it like spiritual and not religious, but like in the sense of like, even though I grew up with my family being less observant than what I was taught in school, I always had a really strong connection to Hashem, to God. And I don't really know where that comes from. Like I liken it to being gay, like in the sense that it's like I'm gay for God, like in the sense that in the same way that I don't know where that comes from, you know, that I prefer women. I also don't know where my belief in God comes from. It just sort of is there. And like, whenever I meet people who identify as atheist, I do understand it because I'm like, yeah, I don't know where it comes from. And I never try to convince anybody of anything. This is very much not my personality. And I just hate that. But like, I just have always had that really strong belief in God. And so first of all, dating a rabbi with a super strong belief in God, I'm like, I'm going to marry you. Like, I'm not just going to have a fling with a rabbi. Like, you're obviously sent from Hashem, but also there were many other elements about her that were and are terrific. And so I knew, I mean, I feel like we kind of both knew right away, but also like I definitely knew right away that I wanted to be together forever, but I fall really hard, really fast, I think, in general. We're both pretty intense. And I think, you know, in terms of like what it's like to be married to a rabbi, I don't know. I mean, I really love her and our community. And so like, I've definitely heard other people complain about being married to a clergy person. And I guess I kind of understand maybe if the congregation is annoying, if the work pressures are such that like, I don't know, somehow you're doing a lot that you're not like being compensated for. I mean, I'm just thinking of like theoretical frustrations and ones that I may have heard people say before. I really don't feel that. Part of it is because a lot of times we have shows at the same time, effectively. And so like Friday night is a big night. And I
love that you called her
Yeah.
work a show.
Right. And so, I mean, I'm kidding a little bit, but like, you know, it just sort of works out, and it's like a pretty natural thing. Like I'm a pretty like, you know, outgoing, extroverted person. And so, and I don't mean that like I'm the life of the party. I just mean I derive energy from being around people. So it doesn't really bother me, I guess. And moreover, not only does it not bother me, I affirmatively enjoy it. And I enjoy her congregants and her coworkers, and there are actual friends and, you know, all that stuff.
It's
so
great material.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, the thing about Karen is she's the best. And so I wouldn't say that like much of my stuff comes from like, ugh, here's what's
and
horrible.
That's very good because it's cliche.
Well,
But
sure. Yeah.
having access to all these congregants and these funny Jewish things that happen within
that's true.
the context of a synagogue, that's great material.
Yeah, totally.
More inspiration.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How have you navigated everything post October 7th? Both you and Karen, and you have a daughter that you're raising, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm always sensitive to the fact that like I am aware and actively engaged in my head in a variety of ways with things that have happened and are happening post October 7th. My dad's family is all in Israel. And so, you know, I talk to them very frequently. The temple has taken trips to Israel. Like, so in that sense, I'm affected, but I always am like a little bit like, you know, careful to just couch my being affected as like, I'm in this podcast studio and I'm not, I mean, if I think about it, like, I'm not worried that something's going to happen to me right now. And so I don't have, you know, that in my awareness at all times more than I might have if I were in Israel. And of course, then like, you know, you talk to people who go to Israel and like, it's like, oh, I feel totally safe. And, you know, so I guess like, I think, how has it affected me? I don't think it has affected me that much, like other than feeling very deeply Jewish and committed, but I don't know that I didn't before.
I understand.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is you and I met in person for the first time at the AJC Creator Summit. And what was, I guess, strange, I don't know if strange is the right word, to me is what we learned that day, I think everybody knew.
Sure.
I'm still waiting for a Jewish organization or a Jewish group to put together real actionable material that's intellectual, that's deep, that's challenging for content creators and for people in the public space that advocate for Jewish people.
Sure.
Like, I think we're at the point where Jinsta's like developed enough. We need to go one level deeper to offer real tangible things that people can do to combat anti-Semitism, to crack down on, you know, fake narratives or whatever, find meaningful content. And what you talk about with feeling affected is, to me, the difference between perceived threat and actual threat. Yeah. On social media, if you consume it all the time, the perceived threat of something happening to the Jews is really high. Yes. And it's meant to create this anxiety and we have to do something. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But the actual threat for an average Jewish person in America is quite low.
Yeah. And of course, you know, my personality is such that like once we say that, then it's like, but maybe it is, you know, like I identify as scared. Like that's, you know, of everything.
I don't place you as
a
really?
Person. Oh, I'm terribly anxious. I mean, I have had that as a core aspect of my being for so long. You know, I come from 4 out of 4 Holocaust survivors. So like I was planning escape routes from my house in suburban New Jersey when I was a child, you know, like that level of just like, you never know when somebody's going to like come get us is so real to me in the sense that like I've just had it for so long. And because of that, I have, you know, just taken to tools like therapy, like sobriety, like, you know, whatever, prayer, belief and stuff like that to ground myself. But I guess like my intent in answering you this way is actually to like, I just mean like, it's not about me. That's what I mean. Like there are people who are gravely affected and very directly affected by this war. And I am not serving in an army. I am not. And I'm also like, I don't know about anybody else like online, but like, I don't have a direct line from any person who is a direct decision maker. I just don't. They're not texting me. So like, whenever there's like perhaps misinformation for one side to the other, I'm like, you know who doesn't know? Me. I have no idea. And so I try very hard in all things to just like be real about my own humility in all of this, which is to say that like, I know my experience and I'm happy to talk about it in any context. And my experience has limits. And so I'm not here saying you have to do this, you have to do that about anything, because I'm just like, listen, I can only tell you what I've lived. You know, it's not even what I know, because like, what do I know? And I think that, to your point, you know, to the earlier question about law, that's kind of like, well, what's your citation? And how good is it? You know, because you have to make sure that your source is correct. And like, the problem is that no source really is. And so then you're left with like, okay, well, I know what happened to me.
Respect this position. I really respect it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, fine.
If you must. Yeah.
There's something that I've been meaning to ask you about that's weirdly specific.
Sure.
So there's a video that you have that went viral about eating horse meat. And I, Margarita Lidova, have eaten horse meat very many times in my life.
Amazing.
Because I happen to be from a city in Ukraine, Donetsk, which is known for horse kielbasa.
Oh, sure.
The question of vital importance here is whether you, since that video, have tried horse meat.
No, I don't eat any meat. I am vegetarian. So I do eat fish, which, so I guess I'm pescatarian. But yeah, for moral reasons, because I think all fish should die. But that's a joke. But anyway, so I have not eaten horse and I don't plan to. The thing that I love that video so much. Thank you for enjoying it. Okay. So I had this story about one of my daughter's friends' dads who shared, like, kind of unprompted, that he has eaten horse. And it was just like one of those moments that was like, we're not like playing two truths and a lie. Like, why are you telling me this? And it was just like funny. And then, by the way, he was like, it was even sashimi. And I'm like, oh my God. And so
that's a little much.
Yeah. It was just like, it was basically like a live horse. But anyway, and I really didn't know like what to do with the story, if anything. And so I was on like a very fun, very loose type of show. And I had done already a bunch of crowd work. And I hesitate to use the word work. Like, it was just like talking. And there were these two women in the audience who were very fancy looking, and they were from Argentina. And I have relatives who are from Argentina, so we were connecting. And like, I had built up like a lot of goodwill with this audience and was doing just like, well, kind of like saying nothing, which sometimes happens. And so I was like really at a point in the set where I was like, what do you guys think of like this? And it was really like, am I the weird one, or is he, or neither? Like, it was just such a loose show that I kind of didn't really matter that much, because I knew that it was going to be fine, right? Because I knew they were from Argentina, and because a friend of mine who went to culinary school and is a chef, who I had asked, like, I was like on the phone, I was like, what do you think this story means? And one of the things that she said to me was, she was like, well, what I don't think is that you should have this attitude about other people's food choices, like country to country, and be like, well, ew, that's so weird because we only eat chicken or whatever, because it's kind of arbitrary. And I was like, that's a fair point. And by the way, she's also a lawyer. So in addition to having gone to culinary school, which I say just because like that is kind of like a lawyer sort of sensitivity to your first question. But anyway, so she tells me that. So I have that conversation in my head, and also in my head, the conversation that had been going on with these Argentinian women. And then I was about to say the story and I paused because I'm like, oh, wait, they might eat horse. And I don't want to denigrate them unintentionally by saying this story. And then they're like, oh, well, we eat horse. Like, what's the big deal? And so I asked them if they eat horse. And I encourage people to like go watch the video if you want to. But basically, it was just like the most lovely, simple, comedic misunderstanding where I ask them if they eat horse. They say, yeah. And then not only that, but they're like, every Saturday we eat horse. And I was like, oh my God, like the horse eating in Argentina is really frequent. And everybody in the audience is kind of like I think one guy is like, oh God, you know, whatever. And then I was like, okay, and that's the reaction in America, but I'm not trying to be xenophobic. Listen, if you eat horse, that's totally fine. And then I'm continuing with the story. And then the Argentinian women interrupt me and they're like, oh, wait, we meant another thing. And then I was like, well, what did you mean? And they're like, we have horses. And so that was this like fun. And so it was really just a simple, like, we meant this and it was that. But the in-between moment was so delicious, not, you know, just like horse. But it was, that's like why I really love that clip, because like, that's, I think, like, you know, and this is sort of a tangent, but like, whenever I think about posting clips, I don't post as much as some people post, but and it's like, you know, people talk about like, oh, you post crowd work because then you're not burning a joke. And I think that's like one reason. But I think that the fun thing to post from a comedy show is if you were telling someone the next day and they were like, you're talking to your mother and she's like, how was the show last night? Right? Whatever you might have done the night before. I think the clip is the story of what you would say to someone happened at the show, if you can get it in a clip. Because a lot of times it's like, you know, sometimes a show is a show. Oh, yeah, it was good. It was bad. It was whatever.
It's also hard to remember when you're up there and you have.
Oh, I guess. I feel like I do remember. I definitely remember. But yeah, I mean, everybody's different for sure. But like, I think that it's like a lot of times it's like, oh my God, there were these people and it was so funny and this happened. And like, if I can get that in a clip, that's what I like to post. Yeah, so I have another one where it's like somebody picks up a phone in the middle of the show. And I was like, who's on the phone? And she's like, my mom. And I'm like, I know. And then I tell the story about my mother and like the way that she texts me and something that she had texted me like 2 nights prior. But I wasn't planning on saying that. And I'm not that I might never say it again. I don't know, maybe. But like, it was such an in the moment thing that if you had asked me what happened at the show last night, I would have mentioned that girl on the phone with her mom. And so if I'm able to get that clip, beautiful. But also I don't eat horse, to answer your question.
Well, if you do.
I know who to call. Oh, yeah, totally.
The interesting thing is the horse kielbasa in Russian has its own name. Like, it's not just called horse
what is
kielbasa. It's Mahan.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Mahan.
Yeah.
And it's only sold in the city where I'm from.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
One of the other things I wanted to pick your brain on is your podcast, Together We're Straight.
Okay, perfect.
How did this come about and what message do you hope to send with it?
Oh, well, it did come about because I wanted to tell Gilberto about all of the extra Jews who were coming to his wedding weekend. And I thought that would be funny. And then it continued and continues because we enjoy it. And so I feel like he is a very dear friend and a person who I enjoy chatting with, and we have fun. And that's kind of the beginning, middle, and end of it. Like, I don't know that there's any kind of bigger message other than, I don't know, we're different from each other. I mean, he is Mexican. He grew up Catholic. I didn't. And like, I think naturally we end up like talking about those differences from time to time. But the reality is that we just talk about whatever we feel like it. You know, like whatever we feel like talking about. I always come from therapy, which regular listeners know. And so like I have therapy from 11:10 to 11:55 on Tuesdays. That's what happens. And then I go record right after. And so that's always the schedule. So I did it today because we're meeting on a Tuesday. So basically my day today was therapy, Gilberto, for Together We're Straight. Please listen to Together We're Straight wherever you find your podcast. And we have clips online. You can follow me at Liz Glazer. You can follow Gilberto at Gilberto S. It's spelled with a J. And it's great. We have a lot of fun. Like, we just enjoy talking. Here's the thing. Not everybody loves to chat. I adore chatting. And not with everybody, but I like it a lot. And so when I find someone who I really love to talk to, there we go. You know, and we just have good talking vibes. And so I don't know that there's like a message. I really don't. It's really just like, what's up? That's it.
Yeah. What's on your mind that
Yeah.
week?
Yeah. And I mean, for better or for worse, I find myself to be very interesting, which is a curse. But
That's very modest.
well, no, I just think like, I feel like, you know, you find friends in your life around whom you are very fun and interesting. And I would say that for me, I have found people like that. And Gilberto is one of them. Many of the people in my life who fall into that category are never going to do a podcast. And so not all of them, like Mike Kaplan and I had a podcast for a while and I also loved that. But like a lot of my best friends are not comedians and have no interest in being in a public eye of any kind. And really the people who I have the best chemistry with are them. And so then within comedy, you know, I'm kind of, I don't know, I wasn't like actively looking, but like Gilberto and I have great chemistry. And so whatever, we're talking, like, what do you want from us? That's it. Yeah. But I love it. I think it's really good. So does my mom. Tell your mom to listen.
Is there any message that you want to leave with my Jewish audience today?
I'm Jewish. I said it. That's my message. One of the things like you said about that conference that we went to and like wanting more actions and stuff, I agree. And I also think that there is a lot, like one of the things that they said that I found very helpful is focusing on Jewish joy. And I feel like that was something I really took home. Yes, it's obviously like October 7th was a huge tragedy. No one thinks that any of this is not a huge tragedy. It was like coming from tragedy. It continues to be tragic. Like there's so much that's so sad and awful, right? I don't know anybody who doesn't think that. And the reason to do stuff that is hard is sometimes like it's in order to laugh and to dance and to, like we will dance again, like the Nova exhibit. Like I think that people like you who are making this podcast and Jonah Platt, whose podcast is about being Jewish, like Ari Frankel, who makes wonderful films, Daniela Rabbani and her podcast and, singing and acting. And there was somebody else who I was just thinking of. Oh, Challah Mom, like just people who are like really embracing Jewish joy. I embrace joy. And of course, it is not to the exclusion of fear and tragedy and like harm. That's awful. And like, I think that it's important to focus on things that we can control, at least like from the perspective of being, I'm just me. And I've like thought about like, okay, well, to what extent do I want to raise awareness for one thing or the other? And it's like, for whatever that I can do confidently and earnestly and honestly, I guess, I don't know, I thought that focusing on Jewish joy was a good thing. And also, of course, like I recognize that when focusing on joy, that can be also there are people who are suffering,
Both are true. And
yeah,
AJC talked about also the difference between positive tone and negative tone. You can talk about difficult things and things that cause suffering in a positive tone.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is.
But that was a good message. I think that's a great reminder.
I guess. I don't know.
Liz, this has been delightful.
Yeah, truly.
I have one final question for you. It's one that I ask every single guest.
Okay.
Who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know?
Oh, I mean, there are a lot of great people. I just feel a lot of pressure to answer this.
Not the pressure.
I have no idea. Cause it's like when you're, I don't know. I love Mike Kaplan. He's great. He's a really great guy.
So I've only seen him once.
Yeah.
It was when my dad, my brother, and my cousin were in town and we went to a show and he did a great job.
Yeah.
But someone who was sitting by us.
Yeah.
In that, this was like at Gotham.
Yeah.
I think farted the whole show.
Oh, wow.
And so we were sitting there like in a toxic fume the entire show and looking at each other like, what the fuck is going on?
That sounds like I've done a good job nominating someone because then you could, at the very least, begin your conversation talking about the farting.
That's literally
which
my
he probably
only experience with my cap.
Right. Well, what a fun way to start a friendship with someone, is by that story. Because he probably had no idea.
No,
why would he have any idea?
He was like too far removed.
For sure.
Although the fumes were quite toxic.
And then it'll all come together and he's like, that's what that was. He's like, I thought it was you, or whatever. Too much horse kielbasa.
With the guy in the plane who was like, please stop farting.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. Yeah.
Fine. Well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. We did it.
We did it.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Jew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Jew Want to Know.